Professor Wang, this is an honor. Thank you very much for doing this very quick interview with us. I'm going to start back. So essentially, let's head back into the past. I'd like to know, I understand you were a student in Singapore, the Faculty of Arts as it was known back then. But essentially, could you just tell us what it was like to be a student of the arts all the way back?
Let me start by simply saying that although I was a student here, when I came back to teach, I was teaching here when it was decided to have a KL division of the University of Malaya. And so we were given a choice. I was asked to do some teaching there, and I liked it. The idea of a new campus was very exciting, you know. In a way, we have a country called Malaya, Federation of Malaya. To have the university down in Singapore didn't seem sort of adequate, that there should be one in the capital. And the Tengku at that time insisted there should be a campus in KL. So it was very exciting in that way, that you straight away say the first faculty was Faculty of Arts and Science on this new campus. So to go there, we started by having, the first intake was actually in 1958, but the university hadn't even formally built anything yet. But in 1959, when it started to build, I moved in. So I was in there from day one, as it were, from the floor up. So it's very exciting in that way. Then to see the Faculty of Arts start with nothing. We didn't even have a building when we started. Then slowly the building came up. Then the first few departments, there were only three or four departments to start with: history, economics, geography, and I think Malay studies. And these were the four to start with. Then we added some more. No anthropology in those days, and anthropology was done under Malay studies. And so the idea of having a bunch of students within Malaya, that within a federation, no longer just together with the Singapore students. The Singapore students used to dominate the student intake, but this time it was all Malayan students when we had the first intake in 1959. So it was already a bit different. The atmosphere was different. And to see a new campus come out of those grounds with a lake and all the lands around, and the students coming into the campus was really very exciting. I must say it was one of the most satisfying period for me from 1959 when I moved up until I left in 68. I had 10 academic years of teaching there. And every year we had more and more students, because as the university expanded, each year was more students, and of course more staff. So it grew bigger and very exciting, and lots of bright young faces, bringing new ideas, challenges, and all ready to go. In the context of a country that was just 1 or 2 years old. So that's also very important. The excitement of a new country, just independent, excitement of a brand new everything, brand new residential hall, brand new offices, brand new library, and the idea also of being a capital of a country that was becoming very important in the region. For example, the fact that there were a whole bunch of diplomats there, foreign governments very interested in the country and very interested in the university. And I remember being very struck by that. All the governments came to the Vice Chancellor and to the university to offer what can we do to help, build libraries, offer books, offer scholarships. And some countries actually offered enough money to build a Faculty of Agriculture, New Zealand. Australia helped with the Faculty of Engineering, that sort of thing. So the excitement was, in a way, bigger than just ourselves. Right. And that was, to me, unforgettable.
That's fantastic. I understand that your background, of course, Professor, is in history, but you were also the head of the Chinese Studies department at one point, weren't you?
Only because I was dean.
Right.
Because when I became dean, then the idea of setting up a department of Chinese Studies to accompany that of Malay Studies and Indian Studies. So, because I was starting with nobody there, so they asked the dean to be the head of the department to start it going. So until we recruited a full professor, I was sort of head of department to start recruiting, because we had students who wanted to study. So that's how I got to do the job. But that's because I was dean.
Yeah.
It's part of my job.
Well, of course, courses like Indian studies and Chinese studies have grown to be very, very popular departments today in the faculty. But at that time, these were ethnic-specific studies. How do you think people sort of accepted these newer departments popping up compared to the classics that the faculty started off with?
I think it was always acknowledged that being the kind of plural society that Malaya started out with, and a prime minister like the Tunku, who was very sympathetic to, plurality and representing the communities and giving everybody a chance to get together in this new country. The idea of having Chinese and Indian studies added to Malay studies was regarded as being central to the function of a national university for a mixed community of people. So that was how it was seen. And it was not only a political thing, it was a popular, social, cultural thing. The communities all around loved the idea very much. I think it took some time before people from different ethnicities would take the thing. So that it happened actually not too long. I think even before I left, there were already Malay students in the Chinese department, and there were, at least I remember, 1 or 2 Indian students also starting to do that. There were again starting to have some Chinese students taking Malay studies, at least interested in taking courses, if not being full Malay studies degree, taking courses. So it was beginning, but it took a while. You're quite right. At the beginning, people weren't sure whether they can get in or not, and whether they compete. The thing is that you got to qualify. You must have enough of the language to be able to get in. So it took some time for the schools to prepare to have students who were people who had very good Malay, who were of Chinese and Indian descent, who had some Chinese who were from Malay and Indian descent. That took some time in the schools. So until that actually happened, it's difficult for the university to accept them.
What did you, as the dean at that time, do to promote that kind of diversity?
Well, we made it known that this is something that we would like to do, but we recognized it would take a while. So that took a while. But it didn't really start happening until years afterwards. Not while I was dean. I was dean for a very short while anyway.
Okay. Well, I also understand you've had a professional relationship with John Bastian. Could you tell us a little bit more about that relationship?
Well, we were historians. He was already professor when I came there. He had just arrived, so we worked together as colleagues. He was very important for us to start with because he was a Southeast Asian historian. So we already began to realize that Malaya and Malaysia, as Malaysia was, I started when it was still called Malaya. So when it became Malaysia, that process of becoming Malaysia made us more conscious of the fact that we were in a larger region called Southeast Asia, a brand new region. Before that, nobody talked about it. And not only that, some neighbors are not very friendly. When we started talking about Malaysia, President Sukarno said, "Ganyang Malaysia," so it was not very friendly. And still we were neighbors, so it was important for us to understand each other. So we recognized that to be this new country in a region where many others are also new countries, how do these new countries relate to one another after 100 or 200 years of separation by colonial powers? There were the Dutch in Indonesia, British there, the Philippines, also part of the Malay world was under the Americans and Spanish, and then there was Thailand and others. How do we relate? All these are under different colonial powers. And now that they're gone, we're all supposed to be building nation states. What do we know about each other? So right at the beginning, there were 2 major thoughts. One, of course, that we must understand Malaysia. Malaysia itself was so new. Many of the peoples hardly knew each other. Even among the same communities, didn't know each other because, Kelantan people didn't know the people in the West Coast. And to know Sabah and Sarawak was even rarer. So in those conditions, you have to know your own country. But just as important, at least to my mind, and many of us recognize that, to know the region. How does this new Malaysia, or Malaysia, fit into this new region? So to have the first professor of history as a professor, expert on Southeast Asia, head of department to start recruiting, because we had students who wanted to study. So that's how I got to do the job. I was perfectly happy. So I did that. And that was what I taught to begin with.
Okay.
But of course, when I succeeded John Bastin, he left, you see. He didn't stay very long. He went back, he went to England. And I took over from him in 1963. So when I took over from him, then I had to change my responsibilities. Now I was running a department which had to favor the building of national history and also regional history. So my job then began to promote and encourage the study of Malaysian history, particularly the study of the Malay states, because that was very much neglected. We knew much more about the British in Penang and Singapore, but much less about each other of the Malay states. So that was important. Secondly, the Southeast Asia side. So we concentrated on recruiting when I was head of department, very much recruiting people to teach the Malaysian side and to teach the Southeast Asian side. And then to encourage our students to do research, doing master's, when they graduate, master's degrees, PhD degrees on the region. Today you take it for granted, but at that time it was not at all obvious how to do it. Because you need big libraries, you need big collections, documentary collections, you need access to different countries, you need special funding, travel funds for people who do field work and so on. All that took time. So that was what we had to concentrate our energies on doing.
Right. It's very easy to sort of complain about the lack of resources that are there. I recognize that it takes yonks to essentially...
Say within 2 or 3 years, we had we were working. It was a working library. But of course, that's a long way from becoming a really great library. And I must say that everybody was dedicated. Everybody felt the excitement of building a new campus. So they all put in everything they could into it. And the early departments did very well, you see. History, geography, economics were the most active ones to start with. These are the 3 key departments. And many, of course, came from Singapore. Otherwise, we couldn't have started otherwise. It would have been very difficult to recruit people from outside so quickly. So many were people who chose. We were asked to volunteer to go to KL. And those of us who volunteered to go to KL were those who did so because they were very keen and very excited to be building anew, were frankly quite dedicated to making this university work. By the time, the 10 years I was there, by the time I left, our department was over 20 staff. Whereas when I went there were only 3 of us. There was Alistair Lamb, John Bastin and me. And then we had others join us.
That's a leap of faith.
And
I'm very grateful.
Same with geography department, there were 2 or 3 people. Hamza Sindut, man, and Robert Ho was a head. Hamza Sindut, and I think there's 1 or 2 others. Terry McGee, as you remember, from New Zealand, went there. And economics, before Unku Aziz came, economics started before Unku Aziz came the second year. He came later than us. I think he was tied up with some other project. So before he came, I can't remember who they were now. He'll come back, but so all very small. Then we built up. First challenge was to make sure that everybody takes this university seriously. It is a university with a very keen interest in getting to high standards for the students and for the staff as quickly as possible. Once you establish it, then you can be more adventurous and do other things. But to establish it as a reputation of being a respectable, very dedicated, centered, scholarship-centered university with careful teaching practices, good library facilities, and general promotion of research interest and so on, starting that way, you set a pattern. From that point of view, I must say we were very grateful that we were a branch of University of Malaya in Singapore. There were 2 divisions. So we were still seen as a KL division of the University of Malaya. And University of Malaya, having started in 1949, already had a reputation as being a really respectable university, not yet the highest, but moving in the right direction. So the fact that we started as a division under the University of Malaya umbrella gave us some of the glory, as it were, came with us. And then when we separated into University of Malaya in Singapore, we kept the name, so we could still maintain that, but we knew that we have to build on it to make sure that we are actually as good as our name was. And I think we managed to do that. Within 10 years, I think the university was recognized as a really serious university, seeking to be among the best. Very rapidly, soon afterwards, of course, sheer numbers. And we had all kinds of other changes. I mean, the challenges, for example, of shifting to a national language teaching, you have to adjust to the fact that if you teach a national language, doesn't mean that you maintain the international standards of a university. Now that was a kind of challenge, and it took a few years to make everybody realize that while you're doing that, you're still keeping an eye on matching international standards. Now that, of course, happened much after I left. We had started to teach in Bahasa. We were still in the middle of transition when I left. So, but the process was very definite anyway. I left for other reasons. I needed to do research. I've been too much involved in administration and teaching for 10 years, and I was losing my feel for research, and I simply had to do that. Good, as they are good, but you don't have to be like them. You're good as you understand what is best for your country and your people. This is, to me, very important.
Well, now that we're really on this tangent, what do you think the Faculty of Arts in can do to stand out above?
I give you one example. To me, the idea of a nation state, for example, the model should not have been whether it's like Denmark or like Britain or like France. The model should be, what did you start out with? You start out with a plural society, very mixed, then you make the most of it so that everybody's talents, everybody's capacities are fully utilized to maximize the benefits for the country as a whole. But you don't model yourself on the nation state must be like this. And the European definition of nation state is very narrow-minded. It's based on one religion, one race, one history, one language, and that's what they were like. Now, when we started on building our nations, very often people just took that as a model. We must aim to be like that. The great mistake, we didn't start like that. They often started like that, with one religion and one language, But we didn't. We were a mixed, very plural society. This applies to almost every country in Southeast Asia, full of different languages and different religious backgrounds and so on. Plural societies, as they say. How it came about is a different matter, but the fact is that when we became nations, became independent, we were plural societies. And mixture of range of talents, all kinds of people in there, for one reason or another, but they're together. What you want to do is to maximize all the talents available to make the country strong, prosperous, and so on, in the way that peaceful, harmonious at the same time. So all those qualities must be added to the list of things that you do, And so I think sometimes, all sorts of reasons, political reasons, people took the wrong course. And to me, the worst mistake was to model yourself on a country that is given. The kind of country, for example, when the Ottoman Empire or the Austro-Hungarian Empire broke up for the nation states, how did they define a nation state? One religion, one language, one shared history. Everything else is outside there. Narrow-minded view. Look, for example, when Czechoslovakia became Czech and Slovakia, so what was the reason? The languages are different. Little bit different. When Yugoslavia divided into 7 different countries, religion, language. In the case of Serbo-Croatia, there actually was one language. And still they're divided because of the religion. One was Orthodox, the other was Catholic. That's how they define nation states. Why are we following them? We don't start like that. You see, so I'm just giving you an example how the mentality of we must copy the West. If you want to be modern and prosperous, we must copy them. And we have suffered for that for across the way. Even the university ranking is like that. Oh, that's how they rank. That's good. We must do the same. Well, you know, I'm very skeptical of that mentality. And we have suffered for them. All, it's not just Malaysia. The whole of, some countries more confident than others.
What do you think the products of a good university, like, well, you know, say for example, the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences in UM, in the attempt to sort of break these clutches, these mental clutches, what can they do to aspire to
you see, you have to be open to other new ideas. You must be open to what other people have learned, but you don't have to copy them. What you learn from them are methodologies, certain concepts, ideas, and then you see whether they apply or can be applied usefully to your own country and your own problems. If they don't, you have to find new ways, find new methods and new terminology, new concepts to describe what you see. What you see doesn't fit what those words are. You've got to work your own. And have the confidence to say, from what I understand and what I've studied, this is how it should be described. It is what kind of consequences flow from what kind of actions and policies that you make. And that is more important than copying you. Copying you correctly, and it doesn't, when the concept don't apply, it's just not going to work. To have that confidence and to be able to show that when you do that, people then take notice and say, oh, you have actually seen the picture differently because your society is different from mine. But you have the courage and the confidence and self-belief to say that this is the way to describe the situation because that's the way this society works. It doesn't work on your principles. The value system is different. The whole sort of starting point, the premises are different. So I must give justice to them, to that. And if I can communicate that, describe it accurately, objectively, and just clearly and logically, then people will respect that. And even though you're using different concepts and different methodologies, the thing is, the net result is, oh, that way you have described a society in which we wouldn't have understood otherwise. To be able to do that, you see, it takes time. I guess it does take time. When we started, we were also learning from others, and we didn't have the confidence yet to do that. But over time, you must, in the end, believe in yourself. That once you believe in yourself, you realize your society is not the same as theirs. Now, to be able to say that and show why it is different and why the difference actually is a strength, not a weakness. You don't sort of cut yourself to bits to fit their model, you know. You cut your feet to fit the shoe, you know. You make yourself a new pair of shoes to fit your feet. That's what I'm using this simple analogy. But it's not easy to describe because different countries have different purpose. For example, once Singapore got separated from Malaysia, Singapore's conditions are very different from Malaysia. So then they just went their own way. Malaysia went its own way. Although we started, you have one university, two divisions. Once the country separated, then they took Singapore did not take the nation-state line. They didn't try even. People say, is there a Singapore nation? Question mark. But what they did was to recognize that they had a plural society. So a plural society demands different kinds of ways of doing things. From the narrow-minded nation-state, when everybody must be one race, one religion, one language, and nothing else. Everything else is outsider. That's a narrow-minded approach. And I think, many countries in Southeast Asia made that mistake. And when and just look at Burma today. Why so many problems there? Because the Burmans say it must be Burman. So the Shans are unhappy, the Kachins are unhappy, the Rohingyas, the Arakanis, and everybody's so the country is continually in a mess, and they themselves don't know how to solve it. First, they took that narrow view. They must be, one, and as a result, and it must be Buddhists. All the Christians and Muslims are all very unhappy, in this in Burma, and they have the same. Many countries have the same kind of problem. Even the Thais. At one time, it was fine when it was a kingdom, but when it became the Thai kingdom of the Thais, Thailand, the problem became more serious, because then it must be Thai. So if you're not Buddhist, you're not Thai speaking normally, you're already in trouble. But when it was under a kingdom, funnily enough, under Chulalongkorn or Mongkut, because of different idea, they're not a narrow-minded nation state. It was a kingdom. And true in Malay states too, when it was under just royalty, the Sultan or the Raja, Maharaja, he doesn't worry too much that everybody must be the same. That's they're my subjects. So it's a different way of defining it. But once you say everybody must be the same in some way, then you create all those tensions and make for all kinds of difficulties. I mean, I'm just frankly telling you what some of the choices that were made by the political leaders and so on affects also how universities develop. Because universities originally don't actually follow what governments do. But if the governments say, this is the aim, we must make everybody the same, then universities are under tremendous pressure to do that, even when it's not actually in its own interest to do it, So the university itself has to, in a way, stand up for what the university believes in. The university is to teach people how to study, how to be objective, how to be scientific, logical, and using ways and means to describe things accurately and meaningfully in high standards of analysis and logical and methodological pursuit. All of the university is picking up very well. One of the things, of course, happens no matter what happens, is that over the years, there are 50, 60 years now, you've produced so many brilliant graduates in many ways. Not all of them are successful in the same way, but each one, as long as you try, work hard to do your own thing well, add them all up, it's fantastic. And the thing is, you must add them up, bring out. Look out for the good stuff that is done by your colleagues and so on. And build them up. You're not competitors, rivalry within the system. It all helps the whole system. If all of that put together, people can see it's a damn good department, a damn good work being done. Individually, maybe you don't always see it, because here is published in the unknown journal, that one in a top journal, and you say that top journal must be better than this one. Not true. This one may be better in quality. The actual article may actually be more rich and well argued than the other one who happens to meet the standards of some other journal somewhere else, who don't understand a thing about Malaysia. So to have the confidence to do that, to say that it may be published in my local journal, but I'm able to say this thing is a good piece. It makes a contribution to knowledge. Doesn't matter where it's published. And then you're confident enough to say that. Blow it up. Tell the people, tell the world, we've got a very good article here, and if I written in Malay, you should translate it because it's very good quality. Make it available in translation so that the whole, not because of English-speaking world, but because the whole world can read it in English today. But you make people known. But if you insist that it has to be only, and nobody translates it, nobody knows. I'm not against it. You write in your own language, that's perfectly fine. People do that in China, Japan, people write in their own languages. Doesn't matter. The matter is that when it's recognized to be good, everybody wants to read it. Then you translate it. Or you make it available. You yourself must say, this is good, damn good. Make it available. We'll translate it and show the world the quality of work. It may be published in a local journal, but it's good stuff. And I'm confident to say this is good stuff. You must be able to do that. And when you yourselves are sure this is a first-class article, you tell the world.
Thank you very much, Professor Wang. I had a wonderful time talking to you.